Hi everyone, my name is Siamak and welcome to my Geosynthetics podcast. This is a new episode and I have a guest from New Zealand this time. So with my podcast, we have been traveling to different places around the world. Today we are in New Zealand. Michael Sorensen is my guest today. Welcome Michael to my podcast and thanks for talking to me and my audience today.
Thank you, Siamak. It's a privilege, and it'll be really nice to even come and sit down across the table on the Gold Coast. But in the meantime, we're very thankful for this technology that still allows us to meet up. Thank you.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah, Michael, I think maybe we start similar to my other episodes with your career.
Mm.
So I've been following you and your activities in New Zealand specifically. Where did you start? How did you start in the geosynthetics industry?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I actually started my career in customer service and sales, and I joined the company I'm with, Certix, it's a bit over 13 years ago, and I joined there in the customer service and sales role. Um, Really quickly realised that I could add more value by better understanding the profession and the products, how they were used and why they were used. So from there, I went into engineering training, tertiary training after I started at Certix. So that was really driven by a desire to understand the industry better and to be able to better solve customers' problems. So I did my basic engineering training there, and that sort of gave me the expertise of selling and geosynthetics and engineering combined. But we might touch on this shortly. But as you'd know, you don't learn a lot about geosynthetics in tertiary training. So I also had to really commit myself to learning that from the industry experts, technical workshops, the Geofrontiers conferences and things like that. So I guess my pathway's been a little different to some that maybe went to university and learned it and then got into the industry. I actually joined the industry and then did my engineering training. So
Mhm.
I guess everyone's story is a bit different, but that's how it worked for me.
Perfect. And how many years in industry and was it all in New Zealand or have you been working in other places as well?
Yes, so based in New Zealand the whole time. I've been in the geosynthetics industry for 13 years now,
Mhm.
all of that with the same company. But I have been privileged to travel around the world a lot. So I've got to a lot of international conferences and technical committee meetings and things like that, to get a wider scope of what's happening. But yeah, all based in New Zealand.
Sure, absolutely. And Michael, I think so with the 13 years in the industry, you've seen lots of different things and maybe different challenges that you've faced. What do you think might be the biggest challenge that the industry at the moment is facing? We're hearing conversations around like plastics in the environment, sustainability issues. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's good. I think really one of the biggest challenges for the industry is to get our messaging right around that whole sustainability of geosynthetics. We've got a massive opportunity to reduce the overall use of non-renewable resources and reduce carbon emissions in this industry. Um, I like what you mentioned about, there's that narrative out there about plastics in the environment, and it can be a bad look. You can think, well, you're selling plastics that are going in the ground, but it's not really the case. So the way I look at it is that the plastic itself's not the problem. Plastic in the wrong place is a problem. We think of plastics in the ocean and nobody wants that, but then we don't want concrete in the ocean either. We don't want steel in the ocean. We don't want fiber cement board in the ocean. And what we're doing in the geosynthetics industry is we're taking these products and we're engineering them for a 100-year plus design life. And that's just a massive contrast to single-use packaging, for instance, that gets used once and thrown away. So we have a very strong story about an engineered product that is designed to not break down in the environment and to actually reduce the use of other resources. And I think we've got to get that messaging as an industry across to the whole construction industry and even wider. Um, I mean, even just there's so many examples about it. The IGS are doing this quite well, but we had a recent project. It was just a commercial building site. It wasn't even a big project, and we saved 23 tons of quarried aggregate on the development of that site by using 6 tons of polymer. Now that's a tremendous net gain. And even then, that doesn't mention the savings in cartage and the associated diesel fumes, road damage, and the impact on the community. So there's a fantastic story around sustainability with geosynthetics, and I think as an industry we just need to get that messaging right. But
yeah, exactly. Great. I think sustainability is a theme that IGS is working on, and we in Australia, New Zealand, the Australian chapter also have recently announced the 2021 as the sustainability year for us. Like that's going to be the theme of most of the conversations and events we are planning for the next year. It's a very, very important part of our industry. So, Michael, you just talked about your career and about how you sort of did a lot of trainings throughout your career. And I have been following you and your activities, especially in the training and educating the industry, the engineers in your region. So what's your opinion about the requirement, the need for training courses similar to what you have published in the past or recently, and the need in the industry and the graduate engineers, coming from universities, not knowing a lot about the geosynthetics, because they are, at the end of the day, these are engineering products used in the civil, geotechnical, or environmental engineering projects.
that's good, and it really became a bit of a passion of mine when I started looking into it and studying it, just to see how little training there was out there that was truly, educational and unbiased. And I think there's a massive need just for basic training of graduate engineers. As we've touched on, you don't get a lot of training on geosynthetics in tertiary institutions, whether you're going for a diploma or a bachelor's degree or higher. There's not a lot about it. And I think it really comes back to recognizing that the geosynthetics, they are an engineering product and they perform an engineering function. And that's why we use them. They're not just a commodity product. We need engineers to understand why they're specifying it and what they expect it to do. And really, if we don't get that right, we're going to have a couple of issues in the industry. We're going to have either over specification or under specification. Now, over specification, generally when somebody's not familiar with a product, so they'll just go too strong or too big just to try and cover that, and then it becomes uneconomical. Under specification is when they don't understand maybe how important the function is, and maybe a geotextile that's too weak or a geogrid that's not going to perform, and then we can get failure in the industry. So I think one of the key things I see is it's not a standalone engineering material as such. It's part of civil engineering. It's part of geotech engineering. It's part of environmental engineering that we use these products. And that understanding of what they're doing and why we put them there, I just believe that's really, really important. And it just seems to be missing a little bit. So, I got a bit of a course together. I did one a few years ago, which I've since updated. It's about a 10-hour course, but it really just goes over those basics. There's nothing special about it, but I think it fills a need. I just want to mention on that subject, a few years ago now, went to the Geofrontiers conference in Orlando in Florida, and there was a fantastic presentation there by Dr. George Kerner about this very thing, about the industry not really understanding how to specify and how to use the products. I think it was called The Devil is in the Detail. It's probably on YouTube. And he produced like an industry report card. And what really came out was that the manufacturers are actually doing really well. The big manufacturers are getting it right, but we're really struggling with accurate specification. And then we're struggling even more with the implementation of that on sites. And the danger of that is it can needlessly give the industry a bad name. I just believe that education is really, really critical.
It is absolutely very critical. Michael, do you want to mention, where my audience can find your content and the training courses and information?
Yeah, well, it's on an online platform, and I don't really market it. I mean, people just ring me up and ask about it, and I send them a link. I can give you a link that can be distributed or published with it. But yeah, it's
Cool.
pretty much behind the scenes at the moment, but just there for those that need it.
Yeah, perfect. No, I think if you provide the link, I can put it in the information section of the podcast, and people can use that. So, and also, Michael, the other thing I like about your online activity is the very short videos that you record while you're on site, and you see, even if it's a problem that you see, and you make a video and discuss about where the problem is and how it can be avoided, or sometimes even misuse of geosynthetics in some areas. So I think that's something that you've been doing pretty well.
Yeah, and we often get recurring themes, people not understanding certain parts of an MSE wall and that type of thing. And, if we can just highlight that and make people think about it. So next time they're designing an MSE wall, they think about post-construction settlement rather than just the strength of the grid and all those extras. So yeah, I hope it's useful.
Sure. Great. And the other question I have for you, Michael, is about organizations such as IGS or the Australasian chapter where we're working, ASICs. Basically, what do you think about how the industry can pull together better to increase the usage of geosynthetics?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and because it can get very commercial, and the trouble with commercial training is that it can tend to be biased. But I think there's a massive place for organisations like ASIGs. Really appreciate what they do, the webinars that are put on, and there's a very good initiative as well, Educate the Educators, which is an international initiative. But it's still limited with how many people they can reach, and I think societies like ASIGs that we've mentioned have a place to play in that. I think one of the things that I've often noticed is we need to be continually challenging this concept that geosynthetics are new. I know they're comparatively new, and I was really interested in one of your previous podcasts with Simon Westill, and he was going over the pioneering work in the 80s, and that's massively appreciated. But even that's 40 years ago, and they were around before that as well. And the principles are even older. So the principles of reinforcement in soil, they go back thousands of years. So I think if we can keep challenging that concept that we see in standards sometimes, where people say, well, look, be careful using geosynthetics because they're new. Well, not really new anymore. They're pretty well understood. And I think as an industry, if we can keep bringing that message in as well, because as I mentioned, if there's a vacuum in that area, that vacuum will be taken up by the suppliers. And I appreciate what they do, I really do, but it can be a tendency to push marketing over against the engineering. I had a situation once where in a particular project, an engineer had been approached by 3 different organizations. One organization was telling them that the geogrid in the pavement was all about strength at low strain and high stiffness. Another organization came along and said, no, it's all about geometry and rib height and shape and all that. And then another organization was saying, no, you really should be using a different type of geogrid to get more macro interlock. And it really just confused them, and they're starting to think, well, are these products that good anyway if the industry can't agree? So I think organizations that can pull that together are really important, because let's face it, if you're looking at a pavement and you get one geogrid that's saving you 24, 25%, and one saving you 27%, maybe one saving you 30%, the big picture story there is that they're all providing significant savings. And as an industry, I think that's the story. And we know, you take a pavement as an example, how many variables are in there? There's the strength of the subgrade, the moisture content of the subgrade, there's the sub-base and base course aggregates, and then within that you get hardness of the material, broken faces or crushing, particle size distribution, water content, your compaction, all those things have a bearing on the outcome. So trying to say one geogrid's a few percent here or there that's good, we appreciate that, but I think the biggest story is that these products are providing massive savings. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. No, that's very important. I think, Michael, my last question, as all my previous episodes, is again about your career, and you've spent many years in the geosynthetics industry, specifically in New Zealand. You have experienced lots of different things. I want to know what has been maybe the highlight of your career, or something you always remember, or one thing that has made a massive impact on your career.
Yeah, I guess I might have to generalize a little bit, but it's obviously, I know I haven't had experience as being an academic or a professor or anything like that, as a lot of the people in the industry have, and we really appreciate their input. But my background's really been in the sales of geosynthetics along with technical support. So it's always a real highlight for me when we can get a project, especially a landmark project, a big project, sort of through the gate, and working to solve engineering challenges. So it's not just like someone with a sales target and a price list. You're actually sitting down and working out what's holding this project up and being able to solve it. And that gives you a real buzz. And probably there was one particular time I remember while working on a really keynote project, and we're really pushing the boundaries with the geosynthetic reinforcement, doing things that hadn't been done before. And just we had to do a whole lot of research back to first principles. We had to search for white papers and research projects, and there wasn't really a precedent for exactly what we're doing. And I remember sitting down with the lead designer and going through all this information, and finally he said to me, he said, "Well, do you think it'll work?" And I said, "Yes, I'm confident. I think it's going to work." And he said, "So do I. Let's do it." And went ahead on that basis. And over the next 12 to 18 months, you see all that product going out, and you just to know that you've been able to provide some support from the training and the experience to get that over the line. That type of thing is pretty rewarding.
It is pretty rewarding. I can agree more, Michael. I think there has been very similar cases almost in every project that you sort of introducing geosynthetics as maybe an alternative to other material, and you're working with the designers and the other stakeholders of the project. And I think the beauty of that is, when you see the massive cost saving, sustainability achievements, and then the final outcome is, something that everybody is proud of. That's a massive achievement.
Yeah, and there's not always a precedent for it, and when I work with a team of people here that kind of really think outside the box and do a lot of R&D work and site testing and that type of thing, and you can come up with some very excellent outcomes really for the industry, I think.
Sure. Very good. Thank you, Michael. That's what we have time for today. So thanks again. I appreciate your time, and thank you to my audience for listening to us or watching us today. And hopefully, Michael, we can catch up very soon.
Good. Thank you very much, Siamak. Appreciate it.
Thanks. See ya.